Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning into the podcast. I just want to take a moment to mention the podcast sponsor, retrogamestore.com.au. Head over there for all your Game Boy refurbish and repair needs. Screens, shells, buttons, and all the bits and pieces. And there's a complete custom build made to order service as well. Also, plenty more retro gaming goodness like video cables, display stand and power supplies, controls, etc. And you can add the code PixelPie at checkout to get 10% off your order. Also, take a moment to say if you enjoyed this episode and haven't already, give it a subscribe or follow and a review where you can. And maybe you want to recommend the Pixel Pie podcast to anyone you know that would enjoy it. That'd be really appreciated. So thanks for listening, and now let's get on with the show.
Hi, I'm Dennis Edmunds, and you're listening to the Pixel Pie podcast.
And g'day, Dennis. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me on as a guest.
No problems at all, mate. I've been trying to sort of nail you down. We've sort of been chatting about this for, I think, a month or so. And I just had, all the action of recently, I suppose, with our good friend in common, Neil Cairns, just taking the Ghosts and Goblins world record. Like, I really kind of like, I need to start talking to some of you people because you're just super inspirational adults living these, fulfilling these like childhood sort of teenager dreams that we all had. So thanks so much. So I think I'll sort of cut to the chase. Sort of the main, I guess, tag that you've got is you currently hold the world record. You hold several world records for Double Dragon in single player mode. You also hold world record for Double Dragon 2, The Revenge, Space Fever, and what else? You got Blade Master. So there's a lot of effort in that, and I want to get down to that, when the time comes. For those at home, they can't see what's going on behind you. I can see arcade cabinets, and your wall kind of looks like one of those really cool kind of barcades. It's just it's a bit of a man cave, and I love it. So, mate, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where it all started, and we'll wander down that road.
Sure. Yeah, I guess like anybody who's into retro and arcade gaming, my journey with all of this began in the 1980s, and so our family were lucky enough to give my brother and I a Nintendo Entertainment System for Christmas one year, and
the OG NES.
Yep. So we got the NES Action Pack with Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, and so that was essentially the beginning of the journey for us, and that sort of led into other things. Like we had a stack of NES games, and we had handhelds, and then eventually when the Game Boy was around, that was a whole other dimension for me as well. And we sort of went into that, and we had the Nintendo for a while. And I guess as kids, my brother and I always used to play arcade games because Mum used to waitress in a couple of bars in my hometown, and so we'd be along with the local pub. And back then, the local pubs, instead of like obviously before the time of pokies, that instead of having those, they'd have live music and they'd have arcade games.
I think it might be a similar vintage. And like I grew up, I guess, around that age group, that sort of age period, like sort of rural New South Wales, Golgong and Mudgee and stuff. And it was the same. There's like 3 pubs in town, and every pub had, a tabletop and something else. And it was kind of like a soda, like a lemonade club or whatever, some chips, and 60 cents would sort of keep you fairly busy in the corner on whatever was going down.
Would it ever? The publican would come along with a little bag of 20-cent coins to my brother and I, and all the locals from the footy club or whoever around would sit around and watch my brother and I play video games. And so it was always a spectacle. And whether it was between my brother and I or actually playing the games, one or the other, it was always interesting.
Let's go back to the Game Boy stuff, because that's kind of like, I guess, I guess my primary focus these days, because
Yeah.
like you can just collect so many and you can just put them all in a small space sort of thing. But they do start to crowd your room a little bit. So I'll warn you.
So I can see.
They're not as big as an arcade cabinet. That's obvious, but they can start to sort of, they're like gremlins. You don't feed them after midnight and stuff. So you guys,
don't you have like 70 or something at the moment?
It feels like 70. I think it's hitting the high 20s. Yeah, it's enough. It's never enough. I lie.
It's never.
It's never enough. So you guys got the NES and then the Game Boy. So with the was it the OG Game Boy at the beige brick?
It was.
Do you remember kind of like what games you got and sort of what was the difference between sort of the NES on the telly and actually having a Game Boy? Like, I guess you're really experiencing that kind of like that step in technology.
Yeah, it was quite different. The quality of the games that you'd play on the Game Boy were definitely comparable to something like the games that you'd play on the NES. And so we didn't have a terrible amount of games at first. And one of the ones that I played to death was Tetris on Game Boy, like so many of us. And so that's where it all began for me, Scott. And still love it to this day, mate. It's even saying it's addictive doesn't really describe like just sort of how the repeatability and how sort of how fun it is to play.
I agree. I've even my wife, she's not a gamer, but I built her a IPS screen pocket just recently, and she went away to Cairns to a friend's birthday, and she's like, "Oh, where's my Game Boy?" I was like, "Oh my god, I've done it!
I won."
Yeah, that's right. I won. That's right. So you're right. It's easy to say that playing Tetris is an addiction, or it's an addictive game, but like I can serve on a Saturday night, it's not much going on, just kind of just jump on the NES here and just play Tetris, and you're like, I'll just try again. I'll just try again. I'll just try again. And being able to kind of ramp it up to a high level, and like high level for me, so starting around 8 or 9, and I've only got so much before a fuse blows.
Man,
and you could roll it back to 4 or 5 and just have a really great old time and just chill,
I agree, and I'm pretty much the same persuasion as you, mate. I'm not one of those people like Mr. Rowland that you had Sean. On a few episodes back, where Sean is an absolute gun at Tetris, and I can't come close to that. So it's casual play for me at best, and I'm more than happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's fun. It's almost a little bit meditative if you can kind of find your little rhythm and just. Like I nearly cracked 200K the other day, and I didn't even realize that I was just playing, and everything just fell right, and I just got a few good moves in, and all of a sudden I was like, 180, oh shit, one more Tetris, and we're there. Oh my god! And I just like totally dropped my bundle. It was all over, but you know what? It's there. Yeah, right.
It's okay. You were there.
I was there. I saw the light. So Tetris, a few other games. So take us through, I guess. Did the Game Boy remain like a really large part of your gaming life up until? I mean, I've looked at you've got a bit of a spiel on Twin Galaxy, and it's like
I don't mind telling complete strangers all the stuff that I own and whatever. But it sort of helps to sort of get to know who the records belong to that you're looking at and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the list. So you've been the past owner of a TSR 80 from Radio Shack, a PS1, an Xbox. You've currently got a Donkey Kong cab, a Space Fever cocktail cab, a Sega Naomi, a Sega Astro City, a Lowboy cab with Double Dragon, and also an original cocktail cab. Consoles, NES, all PAL, NES, Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS2, PS4, PC, Sega MS2, giggity, Atari 2600, NES Classic Mini, SNES Mini, and probably others that you've forgotten. Handhelds, GBA, Game Boy Color with the backlight, and a bunch of Nintendo Game & Watches as well. Like,
yes,
you're fairly qualified.
Yeah.
And you've had a lot of experience right across all the different sort of generations.
Yeah. If anything, it almost, when you read it all out in a list like that, it sounds like I've got a problem.
It does a little bit. Yeah,
I just don't like having spending money, Scott. That's all.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. So, I need to ask you about the Radio Shack TRS 80. this sounds kind of rare and random, and you, what's the go with that? Well, where did you have it? Why did you have it, and why do you no longer have it?
Yeah, so the TRS-80 that we had, the Color Computer 2, was it was a computer that originally belonged to my stepdad, and I think we were playing on that before we got the Nintendo, so it predated that, and I guess it was probably more of a depth gauge to the parents to actually see whether or not we take to play on a video game console enough to facilitate buying one, which I guess is fair enough. But so they had a few cartridge games. The two that stand out for me, one is Dungeons and Daggereth, which was something that I played quite a lot, and also another platformer, kind of similar in the vein to Donkey Kong, which was called Canyon Climber.
Right.
And so instead of having barrels that you were chasing, you had wild mountain goats that would enter the screen from the left and right. And so
good.
You had to jump, and if you got knocked off the mountain, then it was effectively the same thing as getting hit by a barrel.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. Hey,
pretty awesome.
Yeah. I assume that was sort of around the sort of the Amstrad type design, was it?
Yeah, it was. I think there are a lot of friends that look upon, say, my experience of the TRS-80, that they had the same affection for the Commodore 64 or like the Amiga or whatever. And so I guess that was what we had. The parents didn't have a terrible lot of money, I guess, as happens, and so we ended up playing that and perfectly happy with it. And I think I would have loved to, looking back on it now, I'd have loved to have had the C64. But talking to everybody now, it feels it's kind of interesting because I don't have the same connection to the Commodore 64 that a lot of the other people I talk to do. And so almost a little bit of FOMO there, but
I think we had one for a while. My mum managed to pick one up secondhand with a box full of discs and stuff and a bunch of tapes, and that was definitely my first, apart from what I'd seen at other people's houses. And there was a bunch of kind of attempting to go to 20 and punch stuff in and not work and all that sort of stuff. So
the Radio Shack TRS-80 was essentially the same, and learned a little bit of BASIC, which ironically enough sort of helped me to develop into my field that I work in now, which I've sort of taken a break from temporarily to finish a degree and then to get back into it. But my field is building automation and control systems.
Right.
So, a little bit of coding and a bit of general knowledge and that.
Right. What's the sort of environment that you're controlling and automating with?
That's important to mention. Direct digital controls or building automation systems, large commercial buildings that control the building's air conditioning, lighting. They control things like generator load shed control and a few other little assorted things. And so it typically is something that's associated with somebody who's already completed a trade of some kind, whether it be electrical or refrigeration and air conditioning. And so it's sort of something that people graduate into as a specialty in my field.
Wowzers. So
it's fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine there's do you think any of that mindset of kind of, I don't know, visualizing the logic behind why isn't this triggering that? Why don't the blinds come up at 6 a.m. when they're supposed to? Why is the aircon always defaulting to this temperature when I'm clearly wanting it to be this? Do you think any of that mindset comes into your gaming? Do you think there's a similar approach to, like, let's take Double Dragon, for example, because we're going to talk about that. Does that, I've watched a few people play like things like Final Fight, which is one of your games as well. And the simple things of like walking up to a certain part of the train just before the doors and punching across, and that triggers the next two dudes. So you start to sort of trickle them out, things like that. So do you think that your mindset is like, I can logically pick through this, as opposed to someone like me just says, I'm sticking $5 in, I'm going to go as long as I bloody well can and get the shit beaten out of me?
Why not both?
That's right.
It's kind of a progression. I have to be honest. Like when I start learning a game, I guess that I ultimately do the same thing that you do. I try and shell out a game, and get to understand the way that the game works, and from there, I think the finer points start to come into play a little bit, and there is a little bit of association with that, with the work that I was doing in my field, because I think that in building automation and controls, there's quite a lot of critical thinking that has to go into the profession that you're doing, and you need to ultimately work out what a system is doing and what it should be doing, and often there's a big gap between the two, which means that it's not a boring job, that's for sure. There is an element of that in gaming as well, because of the fact that you are trying to solve a puzzle with a lot of little smaller parts in the game as you progress through it ultimately, and that it's not too dissimilar from that at all. So yeah, good question, definitely.
And then you try and take that logic and take on something like Donkey Kong, which is just a bitch.
It's just a nasty game.
Yeah, and it's just there is no logic. It's just a whole bunch of pseudo-random on pseudo-random on pseudo-random wheels, all floating around in an oily bath of fire. Try and swim your way through, basically.
Yeah. And everything's on fire, including you.
So how does a game like that affect someone like yourself that obviously has a method?
I think that's actually the appeal, to be honest, because it's not predictable.
Rolling the dice.
Yeah, it really is, and I think there are certain things that you can do to kind of half determine an outcome in a game like Donkey Kong, but there's nothing that you can ever really do to predict or to, I think, effectively predict when you're going to get a wild barrel, or what a fireball is going to do on rivet level, or what sort of luck you're going to get on the pie factory, and the way everything's, you just don't know. And I think that does hold a certain amount of appeal for me as well, because you're talking a game like we mentioned Double Dragon, that I'm sure we'll get into in a bit. But
we can lead into that now if you like.
Sure. Yeah. So comparing Donkey Kong to Double Dragon, the game progression in Double Dragon, it's pretty well known. Like you know after you've played the game a few times what's going to appear where and when, and what you need to do to eventuate an outcome in a certain area, and move on from there, step it through, and all of a sudden you're done. Donkey Kong's not like that at all.
So what's the so with the let's go into Double Dragon then. So it's a points. So you obviously complete the game. Is that what you did? So on one credit, you completed the game. Is it like other games, pardon me, where it loops, or is it like I need to get maximum points for the duration of this one loop?
There's no loop in Double Dragon Arcade. It's
Does
it's
it
a one
start
and done.
again? Yep.
So I think there's a couple of ways that you can play it, because I think Double Dragon has been described as a broken game by a few people, because there are some places in the game where you can point press to a really sort of overinflated amount in comparison to, say, playing the game through. And so there are two different tracks for that on Twin Galaxies, so that if you want to try and go for the max points, you can. There's a track for that. But if you want to progress through and play through, there's a track for that too. And so
would one of those be the tournament rules category?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So that's you just got to run through, and obviously, and for those that aren't aware, that whenever you attempt a world record, and these days, like I just recently watched a few that have gone down here with Neil, and then the one for Wonder Boy in Sydney. So it's filmed, it's constantly filmed. And so then the referees or the people that judge post game can kind of look at it and go, yeah, right, you just ran straight through. There's no discretion about that at all. One thing I did find really interesting about Neil's last one, when he actually got it, was that the camera remained playing, and then they spun the cab and then got in there with the camera and continued the feed to capture video of the board and the ROMs and all that sort of stuff. Like that's I didn't realize it went into that much depth. But obviously, if you're talking about a world record, and for those that aren't aware, it's Twin Galaxies is the current, so the best place to put up a world record. Sure, it's had a little bit of a, sometimes it's favored by some and it's not by others, but at the end of the day, it's still a world record. And right here, it says Dennis Edmunds is the best in the world at Double Dragon, and anybody can do exactly the process you've done and challenge you in any other game. You sort of in Brisbane, you are here, and you're very much a part of the arcade gaming scene, which is this bizarre little kind of piece of paradise that I don't know that it exists in other big cities. Like in Sydney, there's 989 bar and stuff, but it's a very unique situation here. And I would like you to kind of like, maybe you've been around a while and you're in all corners of it. What's going on? Like, obviously there's Netherworld and there's One Up, but it takes more than just a good pub and an arcade. What's going on here?
That's a good question. So I guess from the perspective of One Up Arcade and what brought me to One Up, I guess that it was kind of interesting how it all started, because I think talking to Steve Holmes, if you're listening, hi Steve.
Hi Steve.
That all of the venues that opened up within sort of the Brisbane area all tended to happen within the space of a few months of each other, but to my knowledge, without one knowing about the other. And so it was kind of interesting in a way that everybody had similar ideas. And I think one thing that actually is the thread that holds all of it together, and now Spaceys as well out in Toowoomba who have joined us, which is fantastic, by the way. And
love the boys up the hill.
Jerry, yeah, that's it, up the range, mate.
Up the range, that's right.
Yeah. So I think all of these different venues, they have something slightly different to offer, and I feel like that's a big strength, and it's also helped to build the community as well, because it caters for, if a certain person wants something or another, then typically, because of what we've got with either Pincadia, or if you've got Spaceys or One Up or Netherworld, even if you've got Pinball House down the road from where Netherworld are, that there's a taste or a certain place to accommodate everybody, and I think that's helped it develop and grow, and it's made it an incredibly strong community, and I think that's why it's so cool to be a part of.
I agree.
I hope that actually answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bizarre. It's just this sort of weird kind of Bermuda's triangle-y, kind of hexagonally, more sides keep getting added to it. But I totally agree, and I guess it didn't really occur to me that, like, Netherworld is, in all tradition, it's like a pub for us, or if you're in the US, it's like it's a bar. And calling it a barcade is probably the best way to kind of generalize it. But for those of us that know it, and those of the guys that really frequent it, it's not just a barcade. It more is a community and things like that. It's got good food, and so it's that typical kind of place where you can be wholly entertained on 3 or 4 different levels, but you can go there and still enjoy arcade gaming. The gear's looked after, the gear is legit, and the experience is legit. And I've been there and had a guy and his wife, my wife will go there, and I go there like before, like a friends meeting later on. And some dude that's like 50 will walk past and go, "Oh, I would see this game in 45 years." And he's just like blown away. So you get that. Whereas One Up is like going into a 1980s, 1990s, mid-1990s arcade. Like, Steve's got a couple of hundred cabs at least out there now. It's an arcade. And so you get that feeling. And then if you go up to Toowoomba at Space, I've been there myself, but what I can tell is it's closer to Netherworld, but there's still that legitimate vein of, we're here because we love arcade games, and we happen to serve beer and snacks. So
that's true. They do have something that's local, but I think John and Jerry have done something that's also just as appropriate for somewhere like Toowoomba as well, where they've got, no other venues have things like, say, air hockey tables, where and they've done something slightly different again, and I think very well done, accommodated for the taste of the people locally too, which is
you've got to scale to your audience.
Of course. And so they've got a few carefully selected pinballs, which I think they do rotate. I think they've changed since I've been up there, because I'm due for a trip up again very shortly. So I want to try and get up there before BPAC if we can. And So, and Jerry's also expanding their line of arcade machines too, as well. And so they'll probably have an amount of machines to rival Netherworld soon, I reckon, which is great. So,
yeah, a lot of these venues will kind of rotate them, won't they? I mean, everything needs maintenance, everything needs love, and I guess everybody and being the venue owners, they probably get sick of the sound of a particular game. They're like, we got to get that thing out of here and put something else in. I heard it recently with the Battle of the Arcades, the new Rally X seems to have become a thing of torture. The theme song for New Rally X.
Oh yeah, it'll haunt your dreams.
Yeah.
That sort of. I don't even know, like, what can I compare the tune to New Rally X for someone who hasn't heard it? You just Google it and you won't forget it. But,
no, I'm not doing it. I refuse. Yeah.
No. So just for anyone at home who's curious.
Yeah. So just going back to more about you and Double Dragon. I've watched sort of Neil do the Wonder Boy and then Ghosts and Goblins. They're very much traditional platformers, arcade platformers, and Double Dragon is not already a platformer, but like Neil was, there's a certain kind of repeatable unpredictability about the game. If he loiters, things will just keep occurring, and he can point press, but there'll still be those points like we saw during his runs. All of a sudden, what the hell? That doesn't happen. What did you do with Double Dragon to kind of prep? Because I think people would appreciate that the day that you kind of walk up to whoever owns the venue, say Steve, okay, so in 6 months, I think I'm going to be good. We're going to get the cab, we're going to get the gear, and we're going to stream it, and we're going to make it happen. So what do you do in a game like Double Dragon to ensure that on the day, you've got the best chance of sort of not taking up too many people's time and getting that huge weight off your shoulders and being the world record holder?
Well,
apart from just play it lots. I mean, is that
it? That's part of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult because I think you did mention that even with Neil's Ghosties run, that there is a certain amount of unpredictability in each run, and that, like, yes, even though you know what to expect from a certain area, that it does come down to experience, I think. So I'd probably do something quite similar to what Neil did, which Neil, at the start of the day, for each of his attempts that he made to get the record eventually, that he would start off with just a couple of runs with sort of minimal stress, just try and play and get your iron, so to speak, and get a feel of the game, because that takes a bit. Takes me a lot longer than it does Neil, because Neil's just an enigma of a human being.
Yeah.
But a couple of games in, try and get your eye in, and usually once you've done that, then it's go time, and you get a feel of how you're going and whether you're having a good day or a bad day, and sometimes.
What about leading up to it, like the months, years, or whatever? Like, do you just were you the sort of person that just played it? I'll play this every day. When I get what I think is a world record 5 days in a row, then I'll ring Steve. Or is it like, I'm just going to pick a day, and whatever I can get on that day, I'm going to thrash out?
Just chipping away at it for me. Honestly, I played the game. My first major sort of effort at playing the game was actually at One Up Arcade. When One Up opened in 2017, they had a competition called Boss Fight. Are you aware of like what Boss Fight is?
I did see a few posters around when they were in the downstairs in the old venue.
Yeah, so
but you can explain for us, like the gist of it.
Yep. So for those who don't know One Up and aren't familiar with the Boss Fight, it's a competition that's run by One Up Arcade for a chosen game that's run by from the arcade manager Steve. So Steve will select a game and he'll set a high score on it.
The game he's good at.
And Steve is just unbeatable, or not unbeatable, but very difficult to beat. And so
Steve has records with like one hand on some games and stuff, right?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it drives me mental. So he's that good. Like watching him play Outzone as an example, one-handed, and I think Neil and I were there at one of the High Scorers Club events at One Up, and just Steve's like, oh, I'll just have a quick game at outzone. I'm like, go on then, Steve, show us this one-handed business. And he's like, okay. So then played through like the first 3 or 4 levels one hand. He's like, oh, my hand's getting a bit sore, and I'm just shaking my head. Like he gets a score of like 500,000 or 600,000 on outzone that I can barely do with 2 hands. And
yeah.
That's so. In contrast, that's the sort of character that Steve is, right? And he sets the scores on boss fight.
Right.
So he set 100,000 points on Double Dragon. Right. At that point, I didn't know about point pressing that you could do in Double Dragon in arcade. So that was where it started. I played it through, and I think what's a good analogy for it? Like sort of like a waves up the beach sort of thing, like every time you play through, you get a little bit further.
Oh, like when higher. The tide's coming in, it just reaches a bit further June.
That's it, a little bit further every time. And so that's what I do. And so I was always able to 1cc the game, because one thing about Double Dragon is that it has an overly powerful move called the elbow. And so you just go through and elbow smash everybody, and that can pretty much get you through the game, although it's very low scoring. So you have to develop from there. And so you have to try and explore all the different ways that you can maximize your scoring opportunities on each bad guy as you go through each level. And so there was a process of working through that to the point where I was actually going to get close to Steve's score. And so eventually did that, got the boss fight, which I think by then jackpot to a few $100, because every week it would jackpot by I think $40 or something like that.
Right.
So after a few weeks, it gets to something sort of where you walk past the machine, you go, oh, I could do with that.
I could do with that. Yeah. So
I was at 1UP. I was the inaugural boss fight challenge winner. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So ended up, that's what sort of got me into Double Dragon. It was actually Steve that said to me, because I didn't really know too much about Twin Galaxies at that point. I think maybe around that time, that's when I saw the King of Kong. Yeah. So that was where like I learned about Walter Day and Twin Galaxies and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And Steve said to me, well, why don't you go for the world record on Double Dragon? It's not too far off. And I think it was only 160 odd K at that point. And so I started working on it. Now, what sort of got me into that ultimately, I played it at 1UP quite a bit, but it felt like I wasn't getting in there enough. And so I built the cab that you can see behind me here, Scott. And so that's got Double Dragon in it there. And so then I could practice at home on what is probably as close to original hardware as what we would have played it on here in Australia.
Yeah.
Because obviously we don't have US cabs. And again, for anyone listening who doesn't know, that Australia, we had cabinets called LAI, which is leisure and allied industry cabs. And so they made all their own cabs here and imported all the games and put them into their cabinets.
Right.
Whereas in the United States, they had the dedicated cabinets, and that was made by Taito of America. And so very, very different cabinet, different controllers. They had bat tops and slightly different buttons and everything. So I recreated something that was pretty similar to what we would have played on originally, and set the record on that. So it was basically a matter of, like I said before, going through and just trying to improve a little bit every time and maximizing those opportunities. But I felt like I wasn't too much like, say, either Neil or maybe someone like Mike Coolican, who can play something sort of routinely. That I feel like if I play a game and I push too hard, it almost sort of burns me out. I get frustrated with it. And sort of, I think that keeping the appeal and keeping it fun is still important for me too. So I didn't want to go pushing it too hard. If I went and did if I went in and played like a full weekend's worth to try and really push the envelope, I'd probably have a break for a few days after that and just play it cool.
It is challenging. I participated in a couple of the it was the one where each month there'd be a different game. There was like 1UP and Galloping Ghost. I think Netherworld, at 99, not last year, but the year before. And I was sort of James Morris and I kind of, I think it's when James sort of first broke out. And we did Alien vs Predator and we did Bubble Bobble. And I was like, I can't do this, because I've got a cab at home with a Pi, and again, I bought some good controls, and it feels pretty similar. So when I get in there, it's at least I can get used to the pattern of the game. And I worked my bloody ass off, and then I went to 1UP on those games and spent like 4 hours and just walked out, just destroyed, and never went to see the game again. So when I see guys like yourself, and like I don't want to keep leaning back on Neil, but he's obviously the freshest in our mind. Neil did the Ghosties run, Ghosts and Goblins run, 3 attempts, 3 different days. The first 2 were a couple of days apart, but then he took like a month or something off.
Yep.
On all 3 days, the first 2 days weren't successful, but on all 3 days, on each of those days, he played for about 7 hours.
That's right.
That's a fracking long time to be sitting there. So if someone wants to say that's a simple game, like we know John Tannehill that's got the world record for Space Invaders. Like you can sit there and say that's a pretty simple game, but if you play any game for hours and hours and hours, fatigue starts to set in. You know, we've watched Michael Kibbe play Snake, and it's just constant. So
and I think the guys like Tanner and Kibbe, they're a different breed, man. Like
not quite right.
I tell you,
I watched his Snake one, that Kong off a few years ago, and I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, holy jeez.
Pretty amazing, huh? Like,
truly.
I think John's, I think the time frame for John's world record was something, correct me if I'm wrong, it's between 12 to 14 hours or something like that. It was actually quite a lot.
And he will.
And so there was John's, and then Kibbe's obviously was more than that. How many hours? Do you remember how many hours he got before he gave up?
I think it's like 24 to 30 hours or something stupid. Like it was well over a day and a half or something.
Wow,
I just remember getting up in the morning, like watching him after the Kong off final, and then sort of going home and watching it, getting up in the morning and going, my God, he's still there. This is stupid. Someone
amazing
please.
Endurance, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a level above me, Scott. Man, so Double Dragon takes like half an hour to play through. If you're going to do the point pressing, it takes probably an hour. Yeah. And that's probably the most concentration that I've got. I wouldn't be able to do any more than that.
Dude. Yeah, got to hand it to him. What about that? Blade Master is, I think I've just looked at some screenshots. It's a similar game. It's got that kind of like Golden Axe kind of medieval brawler to it. Am I right?
Yeah, kind of does, man. Yeah. You're exactly right. Yeah, it's if you think of like Double Dragon and Golden Axe had a really ugly baby, then that was what Blade Master pretty much is. And so funny thing about that game. So the Blade Master arcade hardware was never a full release by IRAM, who manufactured it, and so it's a pretty rare arcade machine. And so I believe that it's only me on the track at Twin Galaxies at the moment for it. Now, so you mentioned the competitions that were being run with like say us at One Up, Galloping Ghost Arcade, Netherworld, and a few others. So
Galloping Ghost, that's Chicago for those that
it is,
it's the one and only. Like, and when I first sort of woke up to what was going on, I was like, what? So this arcade in Brisbane is having fisticuffs with Galloping Ghosts.
Yeah, man.
Like that's a global kind of relationship, which is truly extraordinary.
Oh yeah, and we love it too. We ended up we were lucky enough to come away with a few during the competitions as well, and so it's kind of like it's a fun little bit of I think there's quite a lot of camaraderie between Galloping Ghost and us, and that a little bit of fun banter, which is pretty good. And like, even though it's semi-serious in the end, everyone's putting a lot of really effort. Impressed. And oh mate, yeah, some of the monthly competitions that went through, the scores that got put up at the end of the month were just amazing. But
truly,
something that did hurt about the United States playing against us was that they would have an extra day to set scores, so that
they would chase
as you do a lap around the planet, they still got that extra time to go and have one last go at the final score. And
you're always leading.
You did your best to set the score, and you know that the rest was up to the video game gods. And so we were lucky enough to come away with it a few times, which is pretty good. So that competition is called Arcade Wars, and that's just started again this month after all the craziness of the last sort of 12 to 18 months. So we're doing that for Shinobi this month.
Right. Good luck.
Which will be fun.
James is big on Shinobi, so he might be there. Amongst all that, we've recently had Battle of the Arcades, which is a domestic 2-day tournament played from each different location. couple in Brisbane, Spacey's down in Sydney. Was there a Kiwi? Were the Kiwis involved?
Yeah, look, so I think Pixelate Arcade were meant to be involved, but unfortunately they've had to close down recently, which was a shame because it would have been great to get their involvement. There was also Game Room Essentials in South Australia, who put in a really damn good effort, and also Australian Pinball Museum in Nil, which is close to the South Australian Victorian border, Nil. So they had a few players as well and put up some scores, and
yeah, nice.
So that was the local rag that were involved this year, mate. Good fun.
That's pretty good. And then, as if there isn't enough going on, we've got BPAC, which is kind of was sorely missed last year for obvious reasons, and so BPAC is the what's the acronym? I'll mess it up.
It's the Brisbane Pinball and Arcade Collective.
Right.
So the BPAC event is it's a bunch of
it's effectively events. A 2-week tournament, isn't it? Like with multiple events.
It's a conglomerate of different events and a few little specialty things on the side that all form what's ultimately a big 2-week long bash of sort of arcade and pinball for everybody, which is pretty cool.
Lots of games played and lots of beers drunk and
lots of competitiveness and bad language and laughing and fun and backslapping. And
it's effectively just like the arcade you went to when you were 12, but now you're 12.
Yeah. Now we're all in our late 30s to 40s.
That's right. It kicks off with Kong Off.
Oh yes.
I think Kong Off was kind of where I really I met a few people. I met a few of the guys from the Game the System podcast down in Sydney, Mark and John and that. And so people come from all over the country to Brisbane to do that. Both the BPAC overall and Kong Off. And the year before, when it was on, not last year before, we had Billy Mitchell and Junior and Walter Day there. And it was just so bizarre to see them. Regardless of, I treat the whole concept a bit like sort of WWE wrestling. It's got its characters and it's got its history and it's got the way it went. But at the end of the day, I watched the dude play and I watched all you guys play, and it was like there was no holds barred, there was no favorites, and everybody was just playing. I mean, we saw some kill screens. We saw at least one kill screen that weekend from Shane Saul.
That was Shane Saul,
a whole bunch of stuff. And it really just is pretty amazing to me because I kind of grew up around gaming, but not really was a gamer. But then to see all these people that, 30 years after the date of, being kind of immersed in it, it's just like, does anybody remember this? Yeah, we do. We've actually been doing this for 30 years and come together and just do it all over again. And it's a really unifying and positive thing to witness. A bunch of really ground, because a lot of ground men are like, if it's not footy or it's not 4-wheel drives, then it's probably shit. And it's just not true. You can still have a bunch of fun, as an adult with games. And sometimes it can be a bit angry, like online, it's angry. There's anger in everything, but to be there and see that, and I would encourage people that if you can get to these kinds of events as your part of the world starts to open back up, go and see what it's like to be a grown adult and have a couple of beers and play some games.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. Yeah,
and you might be terrible. I mean, there were people that entered in the Kong Off qualifiers that would have got 15, 20K.
That was me. In 2019. I didn't make the qualifiers, Scott.
Next year you come back and you think, that was really fun, and you make 70, you make 80, and you make that your journey. And the pinball side as well. Do you get much into the pinball side of it?
I'm just starting to break into pinball a little bit now, and actually it's because of our friends at a Game the System podcast that were quite an influence on that, because there is always discussion about the latest Stern machine that's coming out, or what's good playing in the way of, like, say, your Doctor Who or Medieval Madness or a bunch of other pins. And it's got me sort of, I guess, trying to take a step back, not just from arcade and consoles and handhelds, but to sort of also look at the world of pinball as well, because there's some really great machines there. And also, my little man, who is 5 years old, is an absolute gun at pinball, man. He beats me. And so
does he know what he's doing?
That's debatable. But then, do I know what I'm doing?
So it's totally equal. He just knows what he's not doing better than you know what you're not doing.
Exactly. It's even Stevens, and he's got the edge on me for now, at least, definitely.
Maybe the reaction skill, the reaction time on the flippers or something.
Oh yeah, he's definitely got that. So like, I guess that with say BPAC and all the different events going on, like, I think just because there is so much stuff going on, I'd love to be able to get involved with the pinball a little bit more. But I'm well grounded in the arcade and Kong off side, like you mentioned. So I'll be there at BPAC as a judge or like adjudicator for the event as well. So verifying scores and whatnot when I'm not playing. So
right.
It will be fun. Just it's been so long since since 2019, and we desperately missed it in 2020, obviously, like you mentioned. And so everybody is absolutely amped for this, and just can't wait for it to kick off. It's going to be brilliant.
So what will be are you going to give up what you reckon your qualifying scores are going to be for Kong off? Or you kind of, how does it work? Are people kind of like keeping this stuff under their hats? They're like, man, if I hit 150, I'm good to go.
Look, so I think from memory in 2019, I think sort of the rule of thumb of what we were going to be looking at to be able to qualify for the final was going to be like a minimum of 40K, which is what we were thinking. But then I believe the qualifying score, because of the level of all the competitors, I think the minimum qualifying score is like 120,000 or something like that. And so
that
they ended up in the
right.
And I think there were maybe 8 or so machines there. So I think with this, we've all had a couple of years now, and so everybody's been playing a lot, and that we now have a lot more kill screeners and a lot more people who are very good at Donkey Kong now compared to what we had a couple of years ago. So the list of, I think there's about 8 or 9 Aussies now that can kill screen.
Wowzers.
So, and obviously we've got people like Tech, like Matt Tecchio, is one of the best in the world. And I don't know how he's gone with Justin in the United States at the moment, who's just put in a score as well. I'm not up to date where Matt sits, but I believe he's still top 5, which is incredible considering how hard a game it is. So we've got people of his caliber playing in Kong off, and so AKO 4 is going to be something that's going to be it's going to be interesting, probably more interesting to watch than it will to play in, because I mean I should probably ask, what was your experiences in, because you were around to watch Kong off as well.
I watched it, and I was only ever going to be there to watch, and like I walked away from the event really inspired, and I played a lot of Donkey Kong afterwards.
Yeah, man.
And I sort of, I'm the sort of game where I have a very obvious bell curve where I find it, I enjoy it, I start to get okay at it, and all of a sudden I just start to get terrible at it.
Yep.
And I sort of hit that 90K, which I think was around the sort of the third spring level.
Yeah, that's board 4 springs. So that's, and
it just all of a sudden I was just like, and I could save state it, and I could get through that level from the platform down. I could run through there and get that 10 out of 10 times. But as soon as I strung that on the end of a game, and my heart started to race, and I started to get fatigued, I'm like, it's coming every goddamn time.
And you cop it,
and I got 101,000 once, but I didn't screenshot it, so it doesn't count. But
it's all right, man.
I was just ridiculously impressed by, we discussed the unpredictability of it, and I always think about, I've heard sports players. I think there was a famous Australian that used to play for Liverpool back in the 80s, the big curly hair and stuff, and he used to talk about, it is any game is a game of odds. As you become more professional at something, all you do is reduce it down so that the odds become more and more in your favor of control, and there's less out of your control. And when you watch these guys, we're talking about like Shane Saul and Matt Tecchio and Billy and people like that, and they get the same random barrels and they get the same shit going down, but they just have this understanding of like, all right, I'm in this area. This could happen any moment. I need to be ready. They've got the twitch response. And I walked away just going, man, we need to harness that shit. Nuclear power, bullcrap. That is what the world should be running on. Like some serious minds just cranking away. I was super inspired.
It's pretty amazing to watch. Like, I think I didn't really like. I think that I entered the last Commonwealth just plainly because I was interested to see what was going to happen in it. I really didn't feel too strongly about it one way or another, mate. And that I think going in and watching the competition, watching the qualifiers, and just sort of being a part of that atmosphere and being involved in something like that was just it was so much more fun than I could have ever expected to be able to be involved in that, and all the banter and all the weird shit that goes on, and to then in the lead up in the finals, and obviously with Billy who took the title, and you know, we it was just I didn't expect to find it as exciting as I did, and I was absolutely amazed. Like, just
I was hooting and hollering, and like there was noises coming out of my mouth when people would just make these close calls over fireballs and corral them into corners, and then come back and then just kick them in the nuts. And I was making noises that I had no intention of making, like just exhaling. I was holding my breath.
Oh, there was so much clench.
People, it was bizarre.
There was a room full of clenching going on.
Yeah, there was. It was really good.
Pretty, it was great to be a part of. So if you take the environment there and you imagine what it's going to be like now that everybody's got another couple of years under their belt.
It's like, woohoo, spring break. Whoa.
It's going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, to see what scores are going to get put up will be cool. Really cool.
Yeah. It's going to be great. And it's just going to be great to see a bunch of people happy. It's probably something that I try to bring, to the forefront of this podcast for everybody, whether it be what we're talking about this evening. I want to interest people as much, but they're more interested in Game Boys. But the common thing is that these sorts of things can make you feel like a little kid, and they can give you so much joy. And it's just really good to be with a bunch of happy people for a change. Because we've been so kind of locked up and stuff. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to. I actually am like an introvert by nature, but I don't mind being in a room with a bunch of people that are happy to be together, because I can still feel that, even if I don't know them. It's really great. It's really great.
Course,
and you go home feeling like positive, because you're like, I've just been in a room full of incredibly positive people.
I think that's really a major part of it, actually. That's a very good call. Like, I think that you guys, I think it was Jamesy Plays that you were speaking to in the last podcast of yours, episode 13. I listened to that today, by the way. It's like a warm up for.
Good job.
It was really good. I think Jamesy sort of had mentioned like that there is like the positive mental health component to what he does, and that it's a really great creative outlet for him in what he does. And I think that with what we do and the competitions that we're in, the games that we chase, the achievements we get, it's quite a similar thing, and that it's very positive. And I think over the last year in particular, it's given us something really positive to focus on and something to chase, not only individually but as a group.
Correct. Yeah. And even though there's the one-ups over there, and the Netherworld's here, and the Spaces up the hill, and Pincodia's down there, and then you've even got like 989 in Sydney, and it's like, I mean, it's easy to sort of get like, them, like Australia, we have this whole like New South Wales versus Queensland, but like Neil he's in Queensland, and he just did the Ghosts and Goblins record on a board supplied by Mark Bell in New South Wales. So the community, just sort of every level that's required of achievement, there's always that support around it to kind of bolster it up and take it that. It always gets done. It's really amazing. And a lot of these events, I think people forget, how much volunteer time goes into it. Like there's not a lot to be made for the dudes that are going to spend, and you may be one of them. I've emailed and said, let me know where I can help out. They're going to spend a week wheeling cabinets and pinball machines to the venue. I know last time I said, where could I help? And someone said, the most help can be offered after the event, because that's when everybody's done.
Yep.
And we're left with a room full of cabinets and pennies and a week to move them back to their homes.
Yeah.
Epic, mate. Epic. It's just,
man.
And I mean, there's special people that give their time to make everybody else laugh their asses off.
There is a lot to be said from people like obviously Jimmy Nails, the man himself. It goes without saying, and also people like Steve Holmes as well, and then Jerry and John and Mark Bell, and also Ben Campbell, who runs 1989.
Yep.
But all of these people, they're really of the same vein. They are they're just amazing, helpful, caring people, and they care very much about their community. And that I think that it's personalities like that help to contribute to what's a really great arcade and classic gaming environment here in Australia. And that we have something here that's, I think, quite unique compared to different communities around the world, like the US arcade gaming scene, particularly for Donkey Kong, that it can get a little competitive and a little nasty. And that I think that we're very fortunate for the people that we have here, that the tone isn't set for it to be like that. And I think that that's such a huge part of the appeal, especially for people like me. And we're so lucky to have it. And so, as long as it's going, mate, I'll be in it 100%.
Yeah. It is really cool. I think it's almost that, like we sort of, talked about our age, and, we sort of come from a generation where if you have a problem, you go out the back, you have a blue in the car park, and once it's done, you're done. There's no point
move on
dragging this out, because we're going to be at the same bloody pub next Friday. And we've got better shit to do than deal with that. I think it's the Australian attitude towards that is very much the same. If you win Boda, you won it. If you're the Kong off dude, you're the Kong off dude, and I'll be back next year and I'll see what I can do.
You're right.
Awesome. Well, I mean, like I normally give people, it's normally someone sort of I've stalked on, Instagram, whatever. I normally give people an opportunity to sort of shout out, but your Instagram is, I guess, just a little sparse because it's not where you focus your attention. And I normally give people an opportunity to sort of say, hello to this person or promote that person. I mean, I've got a list of names of people we both know, like Game the System and the Bars, Netherworld Spaces, One Up 99, individuals like Billy and Shane Saul and Matt Tecchio, and we've covered a lot of bases. But if there's anybody else out there that you want to specifically, promote or give thanks to or whatever, then this is your opportunity. Or you can just you can say I love you all and see you next week kind of thing. That's also fun.
Yeah, I think that there's it's hard because there's a lot of people to mention, but I think that you really got the majority of the people, like obviously Steve Holmes and then Ben and Jimmy at Netherworld and Ben at 1989, and also our friends at Arcade Perfect podcast as well. So that's Sean
and Daz.
That's there's I think they just finished their series.
Sad.
So that's a bit of a shame. But,
there's always a backlog. I mean, everything they did is like retro gaming, so it's kind of timeless.
Yeah, mate. And apart from that, the usual suspects and Mike and Neil and Sean Rowland, who I'd already mentioned before, and all the folks at One Up, like our mates Ryan and obviously James Morris. You probably don't want me to mention it too much, JM, but congrats on your number one at Battle of the Arcades.
Yeah, I mean,
you're a weapon.
James is that kind of guy. I mean, I've spoken to him about the B pack, and he's like, "Oh, it's 25 games, though." And I'm like, "Dude, you don't have to be awesome at all of them. We'll
try.
pick a dozen, crush them. Pick 5 or 6 more that you got a mediocre at, and the other whatever's left, just have a bloody good time." And he's like, "Oh no, I can't do that. I need to know I can crush him." He's just the Terminator. He's a good egg. He's a good egg.
Sure is, yeah. So I think we've mentioned a couple of other podcasts. I think Play It Up podcast as well was the other one that
Sean, Neil, and Mike.
So who had all mentioned individually, but not the podcast. So that's about all that comes to mind. I don't want to take up too much time with shout out. Sorry if it's already few too many, but
no, that's fine. I mean, it's important that we highlight though that it is a community. Even though each time I have a guest, it's an individual, but it really is, each one is just a window into a community. And whether it be Game Boys or Mega Drives, or, eventually I'm going to have to talk to someone about the Switch, because that's everybody's got one except me. And
I was going to say, you don't have a Switch yet, though, do you, Scott?
No, I don't.
That's okay.
I have a 3DS. I have a Switch in about 15 years.
Yeah.
Look, I've got so much I can play, and
nobody is short of things we can play. That's for sure.
I think my daughter and I would enjoy sort of the last Mario Kart. There's a few good sort of family party games. I think the Switch would pay off. But,
Mario Maker is is a big deal. Mario Maker is a huge deal. It's a game changer. I think my son's come up for air, and the whole 3 weeks that he'd been playing it, we had that extra lockdown for school holidays. So it was an extra week. And so there was 3 straight weeks of Mario Maker, just day after day, and
really
couldn't tear him away from it. So
is he building courses?
He's full on building courses, playing courses. He can get a couple of. He's only 5, and he can get a couple of worlds into Super Mario 3.
Oh wow!
And he can get it at least sort of a fair chunk of the way into Super Mario 2. He can do the things that I couldn't do when I was 10.
Oh man!
Credit to his mummy. Clever boy.
Yeah. No worries. All right, buddy. Well, we will wrap it up there. I really do appreciate your time. It's a school night, a weeknight for us.
It is.
But look, you've got me so pumped for Kong Off and BPAC and just everything. And I know James was sort of saying, "Oh, did you want to come and join us for Bally Arcades at 1UP?" I'm like, dude, it just last time broke my heart and soul and everything. I would rather just cheer you guys on from the sideline and live vicariously through your wins, sort of thing.
Nothing wrong with cheering it on from the sidelines, mate, in all honesty. But I was going to say g'day to Johnny Bond as well.
Johnny.
Hey, Johnny.
Hey, Johnny. Everybody loves Johnny.
Sure do. Yeah, cool. That's all I've got. So thank you so much for having me on, Scott. I really appreciate it. It's been fun chatting, mate.
No worries. There's things we didn't cover. We didn't cover Space Fever. Just as a last point, have you got anything you're working on, as in world records, or have we covered that? Or
I probably need to start working on something else pretty soon, honestly, mate. But the time has gone into trying to lift my game at Donkey Kong so that I'm on a level with everybody else once we start AKO 4.
Yeah, you'll need that. You'll need that 300K to qualify.
Bit of efforts, yeah, I know, man. A bit of effort's gone into that. I'm sort of around the 300K mark at myself at the moment. So
it's going to be like that.
I got up my game, or otherwise, it'll be tough.
Well, best of luck. I will see you there.
Thanks,
and everybody shall have fun. All right, bud. Thanks heaps for your time. We'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, mate.